Yeah, I think.
This should be titled Why You Shouldn't Go Phi-Tech or C4s.
So we thought we'd do an update video just to kind of give you guys a rundown on the red car, because when I actually started the channel, I started doing videos with the 3-valve, how to install stuff, a random snowmobile video, which was super popular, and then I started doing a build series on Jake's, I think it was the Budget Fox body, what we were calling it at the time, which is kind of ironic. I guess budget's relative. And since then, I think I got all the way up to like first fire up posted on YouTube. And I still have a lot of other videos that I could put up, but we kind of lost. Essentially, it gets to the point where you're trying to film the YouTube videos and edit them, and it just takes time away from actually trying to build the car, test the car, make the car competitive.
I think we had so many initial issues that we wanted to get worked out that between kids and everything else, it just wasn't enough time to do both. And we focused on just trying to figure out, okay, how do we get the car to actually run and work the way that it should with the new motor.
Yeah, not only run, but the hope was to be competitive.
Yep.
Which we found out later was, at that point, wasn't really doable. But so I still have a lot of saved video that I probably will never post. But the point of this video is to kind of give you an update and to kind of start fresh, so that hopefully we can actually post some videos either as we make changes or as we go to races.
Yeah,
so you can kind of get a feel for where we're at and what the car is right now, how it sits. So back when you saw the car do its first fire up, if you even saw that, I think I got that far on YouTube.
Yeah, we did.
That was carburation.
Yep.
That was still like a vacuum secondary 650.
Yeah, it's an old Holley 650, and it was one that had some issues with it that we didn't find out until later. But it was a carburetor. We were able to get initial fire up done, initial drive around for the most part was good. But then we had some issues that came up with that carburetor, specifically on the secondaries.
Yeah, it was a vacuum secondary deal. We were still running the C4 manual valve body, and it was cool that the car was running and driving. I think we didn't even go to Great Lakes on that carburetor. You ended up buying was it a Proform?
Yeah, it was a Proform carburetor, I believe, off from Jags. It was a 750. Mechanical secondary, kind of a little bit more on the racy side for the setup. And that carburetor, that woke it up a lot more than, and I think that's really where we found out we really had a lot of issues, specifically with the carburetor.
Yeah.
And we needed to change some things.
Yeah, and we fought that carburetor. Well, we were actually fighting two things if you think back about it, because we had the carburetor and then we had that weird issue with the 6AL 2 box, which was that when we had a Chinese printer cable plugged into it to communicate with a laptop, if you kept it plugged in, it'd make the car break up.
It would be it'd turn it on and off intermittently. So and this is a good point for anyone that uses that 6AL box, if you don't have the right cable connector,
like a Holley cable,
like an actual Holley cable, it will intermittently turn the box on and off. So you won't even be able to know why it's breaking up unless you can see, and we were able to see the MSD light on the side of the 6AL box lighting up and on when we were driving down the road. And even at MSD themselves didn't understand what the issue was, and luckily for us, forms were a thing back in the day, and we were able to find out some of the solutions on there. And once we got the correct cable, it actually fixed everything, and it helped out with that box.
Or just unplug the cable.
Unplug it, yeah.
You just wouldn't be able to actively look on your computer and know what's going on, but you call Holley and their tech support's garbage, so they didn't understand what was going on, and they just said either your box is junk or you wired it like junk. And we knew that probably neither were true. But we put that 750 on there, and the thing felt like an animal. I remember the first time, I think it was still on radials, and we were out on a back street, and you laid into it, and it just smoked them, and we thought we had something there. That was pretty nifty. So we ended up taking it to Great Lakes, which is a local drag strip down Union Grove, Wisconsin. It's right on the border of Wisconsin, Illinois. And we made, 3 passes, and by the 3rd pass, high gear was non-existent.
Yeah, we made 3 passes, and every pass got consistently slower over the time. I think the fastest one was maybe low 12s on that in the quarter. It was slow. And by the time, at the end of the day there, we had lost, actually I think for a second there.
Yeah, we lost the whole deal.
We lost
thought
the whole
we were
deal.
going to have to push it onto the trailer.
Yeah.
And we let it cool down. And we finally got some pressure back. I don't know what was causing it, but for some reason the
cooled
clutch
down
packs
just enough,
weren't
yeah.
engaging. Either we burnt the clutch packs or... So... and that was supposed to be a Mighty Mite?
Yes, it was supposed to be a Mighty Mite 2 transmission that was built. Which is, when you think about C4s, yeah, we bought it used. You can't, C4s themselves, if you don't know much about them, the clutch themselves, based off from the sizes, are so small that they're not very beefy. So if you do anything with the C4, you have to get really good at rebuilding them and redoing the clutch packs and doing all of that. So that was news to us when we first started, and we thought we bought, one of the better C4s that you can get out there, making sure that everything was correct, but that didn't seem to be the case.
Yeah. So after that was later in the summer. So then it rolled into kind of winter plans.
Yeah, we pulled that transmission out once we got back, and we actually sent it off to Dynamic Performance to get rebuilt, because it was supposed to be a Mighty Mite originally, so we sent it right back to them to rebuild it. So over that winter, they rebuilt the transmission.
Yeah, I ran it on there. They said they couldn't necessarily. They freshened it. They said it was all good on the dyno, transmission dyno. It's just kind of like puts pressure in the circuits and runs it through the gears.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up getting that back, and that's when Jake decided, because we were going to put the nitrous on it.
Yeah.
The whole point was to be, we thought the budget route initially was carburetor, nitrous, make it go fast, small tire deal. Which now we're finding out, like, some of the really fast guys in small tire are doing nitrous. I think that the right route is EFI nitrous, but that's besides the point. A lot of people make the carburetor work. But you kind of talked about, you always wanted a turbo car.
I think the big thing with us is we're just more familiar with turbo cars too.
That's how forced induction anyways was.
Yeah, that
nitrous
style
was kind of never done it before.
No, so it was either going to be we have to learn something new, which isn't a bad thing. We could learn nitrous, we could do that, or we could go with something that's more familiar with us and try to run it that way. And being that we were trying to stay things on a budget, I knew that the learning curve with nitrous was there was a chance that we might melt something a lot higher than if we just did the turbo. And for us, I think we made the decision, we're more familiar with the turbo setup. Let's go with that, and let's go over to the EFI. At the time there, we were getting better.
Well, that was kind of the hiccup.
Yeah.
You kept saying you wanted to go turbo, and I kept saying, well, that means we're not doing a blow-through carburetor. There's people that do it, but it's witchcraft, and we weren't. I said, we're not going to do it.
Yeah, we're not Bill Senior here.
Yeah, so we decided, okay, we're going to do the EFI, and at the time, we bought a Phytech. But the reason why we bought a Phytech was because Holly, you didn't want to commit to getting an EFI manifold. You wanted to put the sniper style Holly or like a throttle body style carburetor looking fuel injection on it. And Phytech on paper looked like, one, you could run ethanol.
Yep.
Because the engine was high compression. We knew we needed at least a decent amount of octane. So we were trying to keep ourselves open to potentially running ethanol if we weren't running race gas. And Howie was pretty much a no-go on running ethanol. You know, I called him a couple times. I talked to some people. You know, figuring out now, I think you could do it. You could figure out how to make it run on ethanol. I'm sure people do it all the time. But at the time, you know, us not knowing a whole bunch about it, it seemed like Phytech was going to be the way to go if we ever wanted to put it on ethanol. And we figured it should be able to support the power we were going to do. So the big Phytech, the biggest one they make, I think.
Yeah, it was the 1200. It was the biggest size that they make for that. Which, come to find out, you know, learn from our mistakes. Phytech, if you're looking to do the things that we're looking to do, and that's specifically go out and race the car, you know, work on it in that way, the Phytech is not the answer. You know, the Phytech is great for someone that wants to just drive it down the road, make turbo noises,
like
and
the car ran.
Yeah,
I mean, it fired up and it ran. Right off the bat, the biggest deal was, you know, we had a Windows 10.
Yep.
You know, and their Pro Tuner software would not work with Windows 10. We
Nope.
tried installing it in a bunch of different ways, and they said, yeah, it's a bug, and, you know, I think they kind of said we don't even really plan on fixing it.
No, they were going to plan on coming out with software. Is what they told us. They were going to come out with software specifically that fixed the Windows 10 issue. But during the time period that we had it, they didn't have anything that worked. It was basically you're going to tune it from the handheld, or you're going to have to find a computer that has something
Old
that's
software.
very
You're going to have to find an old junker.
Yeah.
And we didn't have either of those options, so we tried tuning it from the handheld. Really, the only thing I was able to tune with it, because you can't tune from the handheld, you can't tune base fuel maps or anything like that. You could tune acceleration enrichment, some simple stuff like that. Our spark was not controlled by the Phytech. Spark was still controlled by a 6AL2,
Yep.
boost referenced, and a distributor.
It was like having an electric carburetor on the motor. There was not much you could tune from
could
that.
see the boost pressure and add fuel accordingly. So, you know, when we fired it up and I got the acceleration enrichment kind of close, which, you know, I was fiddling with that just to try to help with some of our like two-step fueling issues, stuff like that. It was running, and the car wasn't crazy fast. You know, it was on the normal on-3 kit. Do you remember what size turbo that was?
Yeah, so I went with the larger turbo. It was an 84 millimeter, but the backside was like an 8478 or something weird like that. But it was a T4 setup. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but it was still the T4 setup from the on3 kit, 84 millimeter turbo.
Yeah, and it made boost. It made boost really fast, as you can imagine. And you know, I think we were running at that time. I don't even know if we got into the 6s.
No.
In the 8th.
No,
so,
we were 7s.
But we were fighting this Phytech thing. We also learned that you can like data log on the little handheld and pull the card out and put it in your computer, and you could read it on a data logging software or whatever. But it would only take a data point every third of a second. You know, and for reference, you know,
horribly slow.
The Howie is literally like 100 times faster than that. Like a Terminator X will data log incredibly fast. Also, tidbit information, the Howie 7-inch dash will data log just as fast, even though the internet tells you it doesn't. Maybe that's a secret, but
now they're going to slow it down.
Yeah, break it.
Yeah.
But it data logs incredibly fast, to the point, like with the Phytech, is that you couldn't really tell if you're doing a 7-second pass. Let's say it's a 7.0 pass. You know, the amount of actual data points you get in that pass is so minimal that you can't really, you know, here it's lean, here it's rich, here it's, you know, and it's trying to overcompensate and do stuff like that. And it just, we realized, and we couldn't get the colds. You couldn't want a cold start.
No.
You would think it was on a blow-through carburetor, you know, and as much as people, you know, it's a race car, it doesn't matter. It's embarrassing when you show up to the track and it's got EFI and the thing won't crank up, you know. Like, we used to fire it up at home to get it hot, so when we showed up to the track,
it would actually start,
or at least crank up relatively nicely, like it wanted to run. So fast forward to the start of 2021, you decided that we were going to put Howie on it.
Yeah, I think we...
And not only that, that year, even when we were running 7s, that new transmission...
Yeah.
I think we went through.
We went
rebuilt
through
3 times.
Yeah, it was rebuilt 3 times by Dynamic. This video is going to be titled, "Why don't do Vitec and don't do C4s?" Yeah, I mean that's really what it boils down to. Just learn from our mistakes. Stay away from C4s. Stay away from Vitec if you're planning on doing this stuff. And so we had the C4 rebuilt by Dynamic, 3 times. And I'm not going to say it's Dynamic's issue. There must have been something wrong in that case that was causing issues with some transmission pressures, and then that was eating up clutches. And I don't know exactly.
It would never go into high gear.
No.
One time we'd drive it on the street and be like, yeah, it feels like it's grabbing high gear.
Yeah.
And then you would drive it a little bit longer. You try to take it to the track.
It would not.
And it was like it wasn't even shifting.
No.
You go from second to third, and it was just there was nothing there. And you get really good at pulling transmissions when you got a C4 that has those kind of problems. We
could do it.
We could pull it out in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't a problem. On jack stands.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lift. So we got really good at that. And Jake got really good at spending money on trying to fix C4s.
Yeah.
And it just never worked.
No.
Ever.
No. Stay away from C4s. I know there are guys out there
that have luck with them,
that do really well, and the idea behind a C4 is really good. It's a lower rotational mass transmission. It's going to rob less from the motor, especially on our setup. Our thinking was in the beginning, hey, we're going to have a budget build. We're only going to be able to make so much power, so we don't want to lose it in our drivetrain. So let's do something like a C4 with a lower rotational mass. You're not going to lose as much on there. There's a damn bird in here. Holy cow. You're not going to lose as much on the actual drivetrain, so it's going to be able to maximize our setup as best we can. We later found out that it just was not the way. We needed a power glide for our setup, specifically for what we were trying to do with the no prep, stuff as well. And I think the final straw that broke the camel's back was we started it up after we put the Holley EFI on the car. We did the Terminator X.
I just want to make sure it's still filmed.
Yeah, so we did the Terminator X, and it eventually we put it in reverse, and we didn't have reverse. It just would not move at all.
Yeah, and this was after we just got done spending all this money, Terminator X.
Yep.
You worked with Devin Vanderhoof,
yeah,
HDR Innovations,
yep,
to get, and that was apparently like witchcraft, not to him, but like to people on the internet, to how do you set up a small block Ford to run coil on plug with a Terminator X and not use like a flying magnet on on the dampener or something. That was it's super simple. We got a Holley dual sync, just put a cap on it and use the crank cam pickup in a Holley dual sync.
Yep.
And then just run a LS style coil harness and LS coils, and you just got to repin the main connector to get your firing order right.
Yep. And that's the biggest thing, is making sure that you pin it correctly for a small block Ford firing order, rather than the LS firing order that they come with for that lead there. But it took us a while to actually figure that out, and I've had several people even reach out to myself and ask, how do you do this? And I think we've gotten pretty good at that now as well. Just kind of the little things with doing that on a dual sync distributor. Again, trying to do things kind of, I won't say cheap, but kind of the budget route.
It's budget compared to most people.
It's what we had at the time.
There was people that were telling us that you got to buy what is that giant MSD?
Yeah, you had to buy the
thing for running nitromethane. What is that big spark box?
Like the M600 or something?
M600?
Yeah. And that...
Phone calls. So that's not right. You don't need to do that. There's way more budget ways to do it, and the car runs fine. And as most people would know, it says smart coils. I mean, you can go really fast and it says smart coils. So,
yeah.
So once we got that ironed out, the engine in our mind was going to run the best it ever had.
Mm-hmm. And I'll kind of back up too, because this kind of made it hard for us as well. We had a couple local shops that were supposed to be the shops for small block Fords. Like, hey, these are the guys, and they turned us down because they said your motor has too much compression in it. We're not going to tune this setup.
Well, yeah, that was for tuning the Holly.
Yeah,
we didn't want to do it ourselves.
Because we didn't. Again, we're jumping into this new. We wanted to have a good base map. We knew what we wanted to tune ourselves, and the whole motor itself was not it. And so we asked around. Then they said, no, you're just going to grenade this thing. The first pass down the track is just going to grenade it, even on C16.
Yeah, because it's what wasn't it 12.5?
12.5 to 1 compression
on an iron head.
On an iron head, yeah.
Is it only 12.5?
It's 12.5 to 1. Yep. On an
so
iron head.
I mean, that's not that crazy.
No.
Especially for running C16, which is arguably for a gasoline. I mean, that's the best gasoline you could put in an engine.
Really, this goes to show you too. Just do your research before you even if the shop is supposed to be known for this is the shop you go to for small block Fords.
Yeah, he wanted us to put it at 8 to 1.
Yep. And on C16 too.
Yeah, and to run a turbo, and that would have made the thing lazy. And I'm sure there's people that do that, and it's great. But I mean, you look at the flip side of the coin. There's people that run way more compression.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them may be on methanol, but totally doable. So you ended up reaching out to Scott Clark.
Yep.
To have it remote tuned.
Yeah.
And that was probably our best decision.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Scott was the one who at first, I asked him some of the questions like, hey, I've got these local shops telling me this can't be done. What do you think? And we watched the Real Tuners podcast, or
Yeah, when it was kind of going, now it's kind of fizzled out.
Yeah.
It was,
so we kind of asked him the question, and he kind of, laughed a little bit. He said, no, that's going to be easy. We can definitely do that. And he was right. I mean, we had it running.
We had one minor thing with we had to change to a custom ignition config because of the Holley dual sync,
and you had to repin the IAC control.
Yeah, the IAC was backwards.
Yep.
It's like a GM versus a Pontiac or Oldsmobile style IAC. So the coils were just swapped. Not a big deal, really simple stuff. But he was able to tell us oh yeah, it looks like the IAC's not doing anything. The ignition thing, he wasn't. I don't think he was super familiar with using the dual sync.
Yeah.
So we just did some Googling around and we tried the one pulse fire. I think that's what it is.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And you set that up in the Holley and it cracked right off.
But everything else, I mean, he had it set up with his timing table and his fuel map there.
Honestly, he loaded the tune and he just wanted to see some. We did some short, wide open throttle stuff, like low gear, just to make sure it wouldn't grenade itself. Everything looked good. I don't think he touched anything. He loaded that tune and he ran us through some paces. Let's take a break for the train. Okay, we're back. Exhausted battery, train's gone. So we ended up getting with you. Contacted Scott Clark.
Yep.
And he said the base tune was pretty much bang on. And then from there, it was kind of for me, it was awesome because now we've got Holley, which is great. You're right. There's tons of research or information online on how to do stuff. Yeah, the control is at our fingertips. Whether it's power management, whether it's fueling. I could finally see. I think, like when we switched to the big turbo, we didn't even call Scott. We ran it. I watched fuel trims. I added fuel to the base map where it was appropriate. Stuff like that. Boost builder table, stuff like that. I just kind of, I've been learning about it, and we just kind of did it ourselves. Scott got us a beautiful starting point that no wizard handheld tune will ever get you there.
There's something to be said about
you're not paying for the money you spend on a guy like that. Wasn't because he's going to spend a whole bunch of time working on your stuff. It was that he has spent years and years learning about it. So now the base tune that he shoves you and the timing map he shoves you, he knows is going to be what you need right off the bat.
Yep. And what I'll say right off the bat about Scott, and I think where this is where people get things wrong, is that they go to him and they expect to make the most power that you're going to make off from that. And he could probably get you there, but that's not why you hire Scott. Scott will get you the best base map that you can have, and he'll say it himself, and I think he talks about that in his Real Tuners, is that a tuner is not the guy that can load the base map on. A tuner is a guy that, if you have an issue, can identify what the issue is and help you through it.
Yeah.
So he's been...
That's what tuning is.
Yeah, exactly.
Is fixing problems. So, and we just didn't have really much for problems.
No, he was,
Which part of that is how you install a Holley.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's always been. I know we had some questions about even what our coolant pressure sensor is saying, and kind of coolant pressure sensor and what the readings are and what kind of levels should be, and he was very good at answering a lot of that for us too. So he's been a wealth of knowledge, great to have along, and he did it really well to get us set up, and Ben's kind of taking it from there.
But I think if when we put the bigger turbo on, if we were like, hey Scott, we need your help, I mean, he would have done it. He wouldn't have charged us a dime just because we paid him initially, and he would have done it. But so overall that worked great. But then we fired it up, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna go make some rips in this thing, right? And no
C4.
No C4.
Yeah.
So
the dreaded C4 comes back to shit the bed.
So that's where we actually had to put Scott on hold. And we just it was about automotion time, so it was the beginning of the year, and I looked at Jake and I said, because I was fixing to build a car too.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of it, and I bought a C4, because I was thinking, even though the engine platform's different, if a vast majority of the stuff, we can be similar, whether it's so that the suspension tuning can be similar in mindset, electronic stuff we can swap. Biggest one is transmissions, because we know transmissions have so many issues. If we could swap transmissions back and forth, so I bought a C4, and I was seeing what he was going through, and I'm like, we need to just TH400s don't make sense.
Nope.
For what we're doing.
No, you can. I mean, if you got a really nice TH400, the problem is that the amount of money you'd have to put into the TH400 to have a good second gear leave TH400 would be. I mean, and guys do it. Don't get me wrong. But I think for our setup and what we were trying to do...
I mean, I think that the common misconception with the TH400 is that everybody's like, well, it's more streetable.
Yeah.
Well, there's only one thing that makes it more streetable, and that's that because you've got a steeper first gear, you can put a tighter converter in it, which makes it a little bit better for street driving as far as transmission temperature.
Yeah. Yep.
You can, if you have a super loose converter and a power glide, you can heat things up pretty fast.
Yep.
As far as that, third gear and second gear, they're both 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Right? And realistically, I don't know. I think that for the no prep stuff, for what we're doing, and maybe it's because we're down here and we're not top tier guys, I think the power glide makes the most sense. And not only that, at the time we're like, they seem pretty simple to pull apart so that we don't have to.
That was the biggest thing, is that at this point
it wasn't even so much that we wanted to build it. We were like, we could probably find a local guy to build a power.
Yes.
Part.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to ship this thing to Pennsylvania.
I had been shipping the transmissions on pallets now, and I got pretty good at shipping them on a UPS truck on a pallet.
You can ship them ground.
And ship them ground. Yeah. That was actually the cheapest thing, because they're light enough. I could put it on a small pallet and put a big box over top of that, and then ship that ground over there. But that shows you how bad the C4 was. That I got really good at that. So we wanted to go to something, and actually at the time, one of the local guys here, one of our buddies, he had a Power Glide that he had for sale. So we thought, well, this makes sense for us. Let's do the Power Glide then. I mean, I think that around automotion, we talked to some guys that were...
We talked to another guy that at the time had a pretty fast car, and he told us, we asked him, what are your thoughts on transmissions? We're like, you must run a 400. And he's like, no, I run a Power Glide, and that's my secret sauce. And I'm like,
yeah.
I guess, and his big thing was street racing, and this, he'd go to this no prep track that we wanted to race at, and so at that point we're like, okay, Power Glide's the way. He bought a used one, and that night I bought a brand new one off of JPC Racing, and we ended up. You bought the used one. Yeah. That was junk too.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
we pulled the pan off.
We pulled the pan off from it right away. This is a good good lesson for anybody that buys used parts online. And we watch John Dock quite a bit too. He's got the same problem. Good lesson. If you get used stuff, check that over before you put it in the car. And luckily we did. We pulled the pan off from it. It had big old metal chunks in the pan. And
it ate the planetary gears.
Yeah, it ate it up pretty good. It almost seemed like it. The thought was that it might have had an issue with the trans brake, and for whatever reason, it just ate up those planetary gears that were in there. So the transmission was junk. We had a local guy that we brought it to rebuild, and he started the rebuild process. It took longer than expected, and we were getting impatient, and we wanted to run at this local event here. It was kind of our goal. You know, when we got everything set up, we wanted to run at this event, and but we didn't have any time on the Power Glide. I mean, the whole setup was brand new. It was
at that point, you know, brand new EFI, brand new. There's going to be a brand new transmission.
Yep. So we needed
that, another crisis averted.
So yeah, we're getting ready for the race that we want to make, and
because we already decided to go Power Glide.
I already decided we're going to go Power Glide. Got the Power Glide, broken Power Glide. Have given that Power Glide to one of the local guys here. He's working on it to get it fixed, and he had some issues with it. So we're kind of at a crux, you know. I
think it was worse than what he bargained for.
Yes,
personally.
I think it was a lot worse than what he bargained for, and I think we were at the point where it's either we have to hope that he gets it done in time for us to get it at least the weekend before and test and then go to this race, or we need to make a big move. And I decided I'm going to buy another Power Glide off from Jags and get that chipped in so we can actually start working on it. And then worst case scenario, I end up I would sell the other one once he gets it done and built. And best case scenario, we keep it just in case we have a transmission issue, because again, both cars now are going to run Power Glide transmissions. So then we'll have a spare between the two of us. We ended up just keeping it, and luckily we did. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But so we put the Power Glide in. It did require some changes, and really the reason we needed it so soon is the drive shaft length was different.
It's going to need new drive shaft.
So we're going to need a new drive shaft.
We needed the transmission to measure for that.
Yep. So
we did that. We got the drive shaft. We took it there, and like now, like we still, I don't know, we were getting a lot closer to being competitive. Mm-hmm. You know, the car was doing really well.
We picked up, I want to say, Ben's going to hurt, I think we picked up almost a full second between the Holly and the Phytech.
And the Power Glide and the whole deal, and having time to kind of figure it out, we probably did pick up a full second.
Yep.
In the 8th. So we kind of started to get to the point where, you know what, now it's fun, right? We're popping and banging, we're making boosts, we're ripping her down the track. You know, we're not crazy fast, but you know, like in the races we went to, we weren't first round ducks. You know, we were making it some rounds.
It was very consistent, and
it seemed to be consistent for what, you know, we weren't going out there, and we were kind of being methodical with how we put power to it, and we weren't blowing the tires off, which is really kind of part of the reason I think why we were beating some of these cars that should have been way faster than us.
Yep.
So we ended up doing that, and then we kind of realized that the turbo was just not big enough.
Yeah.
We weren't making, at that time, you know, we were not making much horsepower with that turbo at all. You know, if we kind of start figuring with mile per hour or fuel consumption, it wasn't a lot at all.
We went up quite a bit in PSI with that old turbo, and it didn't pick up any mile an hour, and it was just not, it didn't feel any faster. So we realized, it was just way too small for this big motor here to have a downpipe.
20.
Yeah.
The T4 backside was just way too restrictive. So that brings us to this past winter when we put it's another on3 turbo. It's got their 3-inch V-band inlet.
Yeah, so it's actually it's a VS Racing.
Is it a VS Racing?
Yeah, it's a VS Racing. It's their 3-inch V-band series turbo. I think it's still only an 80 millimeter, so it's still a smaller turbo, but it's got a much larger backside.
The backside is like just slightly smaller than a T6.
Yeah.
Like in physical footprint, it's smaller than a T6. They say that it's supposed to flow close to like having a T6 flange on it. Mm-hmm. And we have not maxed this turbo out.
No.
We ended up getting this turbo on. You know, I'll probably take some video to show you guys how we did that. We ended up running the downpipe out the, you know, driver's side fender, and kind of just added an elbow to the on3 kit to kind of be able to mount this larger turbo in the fender. That at the time was the easiest way to do it. And then we just kind of, you had to redo some of the front dress a little bit with like alternator mounting and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we had an issue with the we wanted to try to find a way we could relocate the alternator in a way that we could, again, still run it. So we actually relocated it to the other side. And then we also got rid of the power steering as well. We were running power steering for the longest time.
All the way up to that point.
All the way up to that point. And then we ended up going to a manual steering rack and got rid of that giant power steering kind of front dress there. So that actually saved us quite a bit of weight. And then we also were having issues with the front brakes. It's kind of weird, being that it's a 79. The front brakes, there were like 3 or 4 iterations over the course of the Fox body there, and it was getting really difficult to find pads that would fit those brakes. And the pads that we had there were actually holding the wheels up, so we were fighting against ourselves there, that the wheels just would not rotate because it had too much pad pressure there. So we ended up going with some Aerospace brakes, cut some weight that way too, and they function much better brakes than we had before, which was good because this year here, with everything, the setup that we had here, it went a lot faster this year than it did previously, and we're slowly getting more and more competitive.
Yeah, and slowly it's turning into less of the street car deal and more of a race car, which is kind of where, if we were being honest with ourselves right off the bat, that's really where it was going to end up.
Yeah.
So we probably should have done stuff like that right from the get-go. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell right now. It's got stuff like, I don't know, it's all solid control arms, which is stuff you'd expect.
We did
Team Z anti-roll bar.
Yep.
Double adjustables all the way around. QA1s in the front and biking in the back, which is important, especially in the back, double adjustables. It's actually coilover converted in the back. Pretty simple stuff as far as that goes.
Yeah, kind of your basic stuff. I think the one thing that wouldn't be basic, I think most people, when they go coilovers in the back, they would locate them inward. Ours still has the factory tubs, and we're actually still using the factory strut mount or shock mounts for the coilovers there. And most people would think, well, that's not very smart, and because those tubs are not designed to hold all of that typically. But I do have there's a support bar in there that helps out with that. And the further you get out on the ends, you have more control over it as well.
Shock,
yeah. So
shocks don't have to be as tight.
The more inboard that you get with those relocations for those coilovers, the harder it is to control it. So the further out that you get, the easier it is to control those ends. So that was kind of our thinking with that. So that'll probably stay here for a while. Yeah. I think a lot of the things, like Ben said, we went from, this is going to be like a street car style car, but we both have street cars already. Yeah. So
true
street cars.
Late model street cars.
Yeah, I've got a
like that,
AC power steering. I've got leather interior premium Coyote 2012 with a Paxton on it, and he's got his 3-valve.
Yeah.
So
Paxton too.
With a Paxton on it as well. So it's like, well, we really don't need that anymore, and we really want a race car. So a lot of the stuff that we learned from the red car here, Ben took to his car on the black car and kind of did it right the first time. So this winter is going to be spent kind of doing the things that should have been done to this car in the first place. Because this one, it still has that Maximum Motorsports roll bar in it. And there's nothing wrong with that roll bar. I will say, for someone that is not proficient in welding, and an actual roll cage install seems to be overwhelming for them, but they still want the safety, the Maximum Motorsports roll bar is probably a perfect setup for a lot of people that are looking for that, and a lot of guys that are running, kind of those 10-second quarter-mile times, kind of what the NHRA says that way. But for us now, the car is getting much faster.
Yeah, it's too fast for the roll bar.
It is. It's way too fast for that now. So we want to make it right. So we did get Team Z chromoly 8-point roll cage in it. So we're going to end up putting that into the car. And during that time, I think we're going to spend trying to take some of the items out of the car that shouldn't be there anymore, that were more of a street car type, feel to it. So take the carpeting out, take some of the paneling out, kind of reduce some of the weight in the car, and get it down where it needs to be. We're also going to convert the front, I think, to longer travel struts. I think we had the Lakewood 9010s at first, which are, if you're on a budget, the Lakewood 9010s will get you quite a ways, actually. And it'll get you even further if you use a heavier spring.
Yeah, you got to be crafty with your spring weights. And that's something we didn't know about when we had them.
Yep.
If you think about, the way this energy is stored in the spring, if you get crafty with that, you can kind of make them come up at a controlled rate. Whereas when we had it, it came up really fast.
Yeah.
It was coming up before the car was moving forward, which isn't what you want.
No.
The having the weight on the rear is nice, but you don't want it to just fly up, and upset the chassis. So we ended up switching to a double adjustable, hoping to slow that down. And even what we're finding now is it limited our travel a little bit. And then we even should probably have a spring change in it right now, just because of how fast it still comes up, even when we've got them cranked really tight.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like a car in the nutshell. It'll probably need to have the motor, just probably look through it just to make sure it's freshened. We ended up actually breaking a power glide. It's not broke right now, but this year when we took it out, we were testing right before the spring race, and we broke an output shaft, which is probably, it's our fault. Some stuff actually broke mounting wise in the rear end, which caused the rear end to shift and load it up, and actually bottomed out tire and stuff and loaded up the transmission. It's probably sent weird vibes, and that snapped the output shaft. Luckily, we were able to fix it.
Yeah.
I rebuilt. We put the spare in. The spare broke right away. So, because we were like, okay, we'll get the spare in, it'll be great. And then that broke right away. We pulled that out, and I made a Frankenstein transmission out of both of them. And then now we've got another spare case that we need to wash up, and Jake's got all the parts to make that into a nice, same level kind of power glide to handle the power.
We've got some really good parts that we're putting in there. I think the thing that's going to limit us on those is they're just stock cases with really good parts inside of it. So at some point in time we might go with an aftermarket case, but we just like having an extra transmission just so we can have it between the two cars here if anything goes wrong. I think if I had the money back I spent on transmissions, we'd have one heck of a motor in the car right now too. It's but it's been a journey, and we've learned a lot through it. And I think we've come to a point too where I think we've almost surprised ourselves a little bit. Once you kind of put some of those, you kind of come out with aspirations that, hey, this is going to be a really fast car, we're going to make it really fast, and then you're kind of leveled with reality. Once this isn't as easy as you think it is, and then you slowly can, if you put the time into it, can slowly creep back into where you're starting to get a competitive car. And I think we're getting to that point. I think our racing strategy is a little bit different than what other people's racing strategy is, especially on a no prep surface. I think a lot of them will keep it easy in the front half, and then they'll pour it in out the back half. Right now, frankly, we're just not spending the money on the motor to make the power that those guys do. So we have to make it up in the front half of the race, and we put a lot of time into trying to perfect what our 60 foot is. And
that's where the testing's been so far.
Yeah.
It's really not worrying about trying to kill it out the back half. Right now, if we can get our 60 foot down to something reasonable, not necessarily reasonable, but faster than the rest of them.
Yeah.
So that 60 foot's more like a nitrous car, and so we don't have to pour the power to it out the back. But I guess that was kind of the point of the video, was just to kind of let you guys know the journey that we've been on, and I guess that's kind of part of the reason why we weren't filming, is just because the amount of struggles and change, and it was enough effort to just get the car to run rather than just trying to document it all. So I guess this video, I thought it was going to be shorter than this, but it ended up being, there's a lot to kind of go over in the 3 years since we've posted anything about this car. So hopefully that brings everybody up to speed, and then hopefully now we can do short kind of snippets of upgrades and looking at them and talking about what we did to make it easier. And then you'll kind of see a lot of the struggles that we had with this car, how it transferred into when I built my car, and the steps, kind of how I'm building my car. And that car's not fully up to snuff yet, but we're getting closer. So
it'll be faster than this car. But big takeaways, I think: stay away from C4s.
Yeah.
Stay away from Phytech if you plan on doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And this winter, I think we'll have some bigger changes, but I think we have enough, like Ben said, enough of a grasp on it right now that we're not going to be trying to fight it. Hopefully, to keep it running. I think right now it's just going back over it and get it to where it should have been in the beginning.
Yeah, and kind of getting it closer to what the goal was, which was a fast, small tire car. Fast is a relative term.
Yeah. Is this where we create drama and we just start calling people out?
No, we're not going to do that. Because if you start looking at the internet and some of these really fast, small tire, no prep cars, they are really fast. And I think the other thing we're learning is that there's kind of two different levels of no prep. A lot of people call it front side versus back half or finish line, however they say it, whether you're doing it backwards or you're racing from the starting line. I went down to Great Lakes for a no prep and I was on the starting line and I had to tie my shoes on tighter, it's so that they wouldn't get pulled off. And they didn't spray, but the amount of traction versus when we go to Hillsboro, which is, I would call, what as no preppy as you get.
Yeah.
They've got rubber down just because the amount of passes that they've made on the surface, but it's really bad asphalt and you don't have to worry about it pulling your shoes off, that's for sure. And that's kind of where I think realistically we'll be competitive. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, is to be competitive on that kind of surface, and it's in our backyard, which is nice.
And I think that even if you look at that surface and kind of talking with a lot of people and kind of being out in some of those areas and kind of putting some down on the street, I think that surface is even worse than you'd find on the street.
That's from the sounds of it. A lot of the places that they race, down in the cities, it's they come up to Hillsboro to race, and they say it's worse than some of their roads. So I think we can do good there. Then after that, it's just beefing everything up so we can put more power to it. So, but stay tuned. Hopefully we have a lot more content as far as actual, I don't know, whether it's races or it's the stuff we do to it, and kind of take you along to see. Obviously, you haven't seen the struggle yet, but we're telling you about it right now. But
let us know below what you guys want to see. If there's anything that, as we're going through this car, putting the new cage in this car, or anything that we've done that you want to see in more in depth, we can cover those things. If there's anything that you want to know about, what steps are we doing to try to get this to hook better, or what data are we using in order to try to tune the car, or what data do we think would be very useful to try on that surface, let us know. I think we can kind of go over some of that sort of stuff too, because I think that's one underrated part as well, is getting data and getting good data and being able to utilize that to tune the car. Because I think that what we found and what Ben has found, you're only as good as the data you can get from that surface, and you can only take so many videos from so many angles too. And I think that those videos really help, but there's other data points that help you be able to piece the whole puzzle together and what's actually going on.
You can tell from a video, you get a good video and it does a lot for you. But there's certain data that you could put on the car where, instead of looking at the video and going, okay, it looks like it started spinning at a tenth out, or it started spinning at if you had the right data on the car, I think that you would maybe double check with the video to confirm, but you should be able to be like, okay, it looks like it's here in the video, and you should be able to look at your data and go, okay, I know exactly where it's at, and this is where we're going to pull time here, this is where we're going to, we're not experts at this, we're really grassroots, never done it before, just trying to learn from people that go to the track, and some of it seems like witch magic, it seems like nobody wants to talk about it, but I could tell you for a fact that nothing that they've shared with us is what makes them go really fast. And I don't think that there is something that they could share with us that would make us go really fast. It's about the amount of time and understanding, practicing and test passes. And it sucks because it almost seems like, especially when you're grassroots like us, you almost gotta you always got to run a engine into the dirt before you got enough information. And we need to start to get to the point where, and hopefully this winter is where we do it, where the car is where it needs to sit to be competitive as far as the amount of what we have in it, the turbo size, or the amount of cage, the amount of chassis underneath it, so that the winter after that we're not doing major overhauls. We're doing maintenance, little things here and there, but so that we can actually get some traction to kind of come back out the next year with a combo that's the same, so that your data transfers to some respect. So I
think that's really valuable, and I think that, like Ben said too, I think that through this whole process you kind of find out that no one's going to really tell you anything good. You kind of have to make those mistakes in order to get better. So I think the purpose of these videos is trying to let you know what mistakes we made, so that hopefully you can be better on your setup. That's Ben's car as a nutshell. Is okay, what mistakes did we make on this car that we can do right the first time in that car, and hopefully the chassis are so similar, between.
They're both like a Fox.
They're both like a Fox chassis.
My car's a 97.
Their weights are very similar. Everything about them are very, very similar. So how can we make what we've learned on this car transfer over to that car and make things a lot easier that way? And then how can we get twice the amount of data and try to use that to our advantage too?
Yeah, not only that, but being realistic with ourselves. When we first went out to build this car, it was going to be like there's a lot of emphasis still being able to drive down the street, but now we find we don't. We pretty much put it on a trailer, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it being a race car, right?
It'll still take an alternator, and it'll still keep the radiator in the front,
charging cooling.
Yeah, we want to be able to still at some point in time get down to Milwaukee and do some of that sort of stuff, and that's going to require some of your street car stuff to it, but it doesn't require some of those other.
Doesn't require the power steering and the full dash and the, just a lot of stuff that's more street car stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
So with that, I guess that's where we'll leave it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Mainly comment. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll get around to it. So,
thanks everyone.